a summary here. So Monique, at the bottom there is the number you're asking for today.
Thank you.
Right, so there's 2.3 million scoring combinations, but the number of unique people is that. Is that enough?
It'd be hard to find my match.
Okay.
What number is that? You said 3 trillion.
It's a 3 trillion, I think. Yeah.
I'm just gonna round it up to 3 trillion.
Yeah. I don't think there's a word beyond trillion, but anyway. Ryan, who is our mathematician in the office, our CTO, he's the one who did all that out.
Well, given that, you should say almost 4 trillion.
Yep. It'd be easier, wouldn't it?
Closer.
It'd be
Closer to
easier.
4 trillion.
So, how we've built this, and you'll recall when you completed it, you answered 46 questions, and in each question there were 3 items, which were either a word or a phrase, and you were choosing most like and least like, and one got left out. And to every one of all the 8 factors, there are somewhere between 20 to 25 words that build up each factor. So there's got to be a minimum number of words that positively correlate to that factor for it to validate, to get a high enough reliability factor. And the way we did it was that, for example, for the commanding factor, might be the first word, and then the patience factor might be the second word, and the risk-taking factor might be the third word, right? So that's like a 1, 3, 5 in the system in terms of that order. That same combination with different words, measuring the factors, would then be switched around later on, where another word that relates to patience might be the first word out of the 3 items, and then the risk-taking might become the second, and the command becomes the first. So there is no bias inside the system to, people would always select the first one and make the last one the least like. Does that making sense? So it's a complete combination, and to basically get it to work, all of the phrases in there have all got to cross-correlate with each other inside the system. So this sort of requires, as you'll see if you read the validation study, there are various known psychometric software platforms or programs that are used to ensure that there is the right level of correlation between the words, and we have all those measured out. So a very scientific process took place. The words came up from a group of us experienced in building these types of systems. So there were 5 people involved in that, and then we brought in outside experts from, in fact, over time it's been 2 universities have had a go at this and validated the system. So we had a version 1 where it was actually Georgia State University, and then the second time around we did Georgia Tech. So that's how the system's been built up. And at the end of the day, I always say the proof in the pudding really is do you find it to be accurate?
Have you ever submitted it for the ISO certification?
Not the ISO, but there is another certification that we've been having. We've been looking at having it reviewed against, from a psychometric perspective. But no, we haven't gone down the ISO path. In fact, at the end of the day, to be honest, it's not that we haven't wanted to. We've just been so busy doing everything else. It just went off the radar screen. And actually, no one's asked us to do it. So
I know there's a new one coming on the market, but that's their big anchor, is that they've ISO approved. They're mainly in Europe, and they're entering the U.S. market, which I thought was interesting because no one else in the U.S. market is ISO approved. So
yeah, there's another it's named SLIP now. There is another process which is effectively equivalent to that, and that involves peer reviews, and it's a formalised process of review. So these are the questions. So Attentive, that's more of a patient type question. That's a fast, that's actually a creative question, and that's a process, and that's a structure plan type question. So that's and so, you know, what's important is that we've just used the word or the phrase to remove the situational bias out and the cultural bias. That's the real sort of secret that's in there. Whereas these are the sort of situational based questions that you will get in a lot of other assessments. Not saying all of them, but that's what you will get. And we only use the 3 words. There is another, like for example, Colby uses 4 choices, and it's forced choice, but they actually use more situational based questions. Now the thing with that is that when you've got 4 choices, there's more flexibility in choosing the 2 that you want to leave out. So the least like is easier to get to. Ours is very tight to do. You probably found that almost uncomfortable at times in completing. That is quite a deliberate step because we're trying to get you to really instinctively get to what's the real strength, what's the priority of the strength of pioneering over commanding, for example, or patience over the outgoing, to really get people to prioritise that. And this was a question that Keith brought up with me before, because he asked me the results. You know, he uses with a risk profiling instrument that is situational based. So Phenometrica ask a lot of questions like this on measuring risk. And when Keith brought that up, I said, so I would assume their results are using the situational based questions. The outcomes will be 1 standard deviation higher on measuring risk than under our system, and that's about what it is. People are always more of a risk taker when you're asking the situational based questions, because the blind spot is we all think that we take better, we can handle more risk. It's like we all think we're better at driving a car than we really are. So it's quite interesting. Driving a car can be quite reflective of your behaviour, but we all think we're better at it than we actually are. And yeah, Leon, you take a lot of risks driving a car.
We talked about that already.
So, and we found that actually with DISC, that for example, there in the outgoing factor, there or the I in DISC, people will overinflate that by 1 standard deviation, and so that's where the power of the forced choice model comes in. We're very specific in our system at measuring the natural behaviour only. We're not measuring the whole of the person. The other systems are measuring more of personality. Now there is, you know, what you have to remember are there are different versions of Myers-Briggs and DISC out there in the market. So there is one version of Myers-Briggs that does now use forced choice. At one point DISC used it, and they've gone back to the situational based questions, depending on which version you're going at. The thing with the situational based questions is they are tighter to do, a bit harder, and it's not as consumer friendly in a way. It's quite quick to do, it's not as consumer friendly. And so some of these groups have gone to the consumer friendly for taking the questions because it's more fun. You know, my view on that is, well, you know, this isn't necessarily about fun, this is about getting the right, you know, when you go for an MRI scan, do you want it to be accurate? You're having that knee operation, do you want the doctor to pull out the right ligament out of your knee, or just go in there and take a guess? Because that's what we're talking about. Did that make you laugh, Leon?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Well, I used to use a graphic of, here's an X-ray, and it would show an X-ray of a person's knee, and then here's the MRI scan of that same knee, and then you look at it and say, okay, which one would you want to have the operation done on, right, or the diagnosis made on, right? And the choice is yours. So the basis of what we do, and this is where you know, some of it comes from, is the Big Five research. So that's quite well-known research on factors. And so our work relates back to the Big Five work. We've also used Hogan in the past as a validation system as well, just to compare ourselves against them. Where we start to differ against other systems really is that we're measuring the 8 factors versus 4, or in some of them 6, and then the 24 sub-factors as well. And we use our reports across these areas. So we've been able to make it quite multi-dimensional in terms of what we do in the industries that we're working in, with more specific reporting insights.